the situation in the northern part of the country. What did he say? In Hausa, he said, in zaka faɗi gaskiya, because he was a teacher. Now, as a teacher, whatever I'm going to say here must be proven and it could be looked at. I cannot come here to teach you or to tell you my own personal opinion. No. As a teacher, my task is to expose you to the literature, to be able to understand certain things between things, to know where you are today. Now he said, mu dai hakkinmu mu gaya muku as teachers, ko ku karba ko ku yi dariya. Idan kuka yi dariya, dariyar ku kuwa za ta zama kuka gaba. Da nadamar mai kin gaskiya, next, ilimi, hikima, addini duka, da dabarun sarrafa duniya, muka lalata muka argaza. Gashi yau sai ana mana dariya. Arewa, he was speaking at that time. Arewa zumunta ta mutu, sai nishadi sai sharholiya, sai alfahari da yawan kufa, girman kai sai kombonsiya, matukar yaranmu suna bara, Allah ba ku mu samu abin miya, suna yafe da fatan bunsuru, babu shakka arewa sai mun sha wuya. The English translation, please. He said, when you speak, speak the truth. Whatever the consequences, it is worthwhile. Our responsibilities as teacher is to inform you the truth. You accept it or you laugh it off. Your laughter will soon turn into sorrow in the future, and the kind of regret by anyone who rejects the truth, knowledge, wisdom, and religion, all, and the skills to manipulate the world, we despoil and scatter them. Today, we have become a laughing stock. Fraternal attitude is dead in the north. Nothing remains but useless merrymaking, pomposity and covetousness, pride and ostentation. So long as our boys go begging, may Allah or may God give you so that you give us what we can buy soup with, covered with goat's skin. Undoubtedly, we shall suffer. Now, this is very, very relevant. I told you I was a shoe shiner, but today I'm not one. But I can still do the job if you want me to have extra income. But the point is, the difference between me and the boy picking bottles by the roadside is because I went to school. It's just because I went to school. No royalty in my family. If you go to my local government, nobody didn't even know my father's history because he was moving from one village to the next, planting churches. But today, because of education, I can stand before our Father, His Royal Majesty. At his discretion, he will allow me to stand before you to speak. It's education. And this is what this man wrote 40 years ago. 75 years ago about our own community in the northern region as at that time. Next. The organization of my paper, when I go through this, you understand it, a lot of areas I will skip them. So I have provided a summary. The paper has the following aims: to discuss how ethnic and sub-ethnic sensitivities in Nigeria have been sharpened over language matters, to show that language does indeed have a role in economic, political, and educational development, to survey the concomitant tensions at once disturbing and distracting which tend to, one, accumulate, two, deepen suspicion, and transfer to other areas of our national life, and to also show how language is a potent force in social integration, to debate ways in which language planning can contribute towards economic advantage. We are going to take the Berom case as a case study. At the tail end, you'll see what I mean there. Next. So I have arranged the paper to go chronologically along this so that we run through the history of Nigeria, but as a linguist, to show you how language has been under the carpet in almost every discussion as we go along. You know, the interesting thing about our African languages, or languages generally, the name of the language is the name of the people. So if you tell people, can you change the name of the, say, let us take one of the Nigerian languages to be the official and the national language, you discover that it is the name of the people, and at the same time, the name of the language, others will think, oh no, now we are the leaders. But there is nothing wrong to use somebody else's language for the purposes of advancement. Okay, Fanon has used French in Algeria, and he fought the civil war there. But the problem was not the French language, but the people and what they use the language for. That is what makes the difference, like I mentioned earlier on. So I go through linguistic classification, relationships, and historical influences. I also show Plateau State as a zone of ethnic convergence and diversity. The English in colonial Nigeria, British colonial rule, organization of the country, administration of the regional government. Along all this, I will be navigating with language. Okay, so don't mind the history, but it's to guide us. In part 2, linguistic question in national integration and political development, the role of the post-colonial governments. In part 3, the role of language and economic development, the interaction between language and economic activity, some features of language relevant to economic activity, then language policy and language planning for the use of Nigerian languages in education and economic activity. Part 4, the role of Nigerian languages in educational and economic development, a brief program of action, how the Berom will revitalize their language, and then we conclude. I think with this, since most of us have been to school, whether I continue with the lecture or not, you now have a clear picture of what I'm going to present. So I will skip a lot of sections because at the end of the day, I hope, you know, the organizers of the conference will have a copy. There are a lot of grammatical errors and some of the thoughts were not flowing because I told you the tension under which I wrote this paper. Next. Now, I don't need to bother you again, but what I want to say, a profound understanding of the state of affairs is very, very important for us to understand the political quagmire sometimes we find ourselves in. Next. I do not wish to say that I have answers to all the questions I'm going to raise, but all of us in the discussion, we can find solutions. Next. What makes me wonder about our society today, like the poet who wrote that poem, to be most tragic and ironic is the question I always ask myself. Why are two indigents of the same community who speak the same language and share the same substrata culture are slaughtering each other in the name of linguistic or social differences? People who speak the same language, have the same religion, living in the same community, and they will wake up and start slaughtering each other just because they feel they are different today. Why? I don't have an answer, but we need to find an answer together. In other words, why should such human rights violation, which has been increasing at a disturbing rate, happen in a state which prides herself for freedom and center of tourism? I want to say the frequent political or ethno-religious impired conflicts is a damning testimony to the fact that both main religious groups in the state appear to some of us to have abandoned one of the most greatest commandments in the holy books, love your neighbor as yourself. And they have resolved, and they are now being seen as what? They dump the gospel of peace and are trying to sort out ethno-political, ethno-religious, and economic injustice within the body politic. Because that is what we try to show. Next. As a result, this portrays both of them as having unfortunately integrated aggression and intolerance characteristics, which have been condemned by both the holy books, the Holy Bible and the Quran. If not, how can one explain the burning of places of worship and the bloodbath that often follow between fellow citizens by seemingly just an opinion which perhaps I don't even have a clue of? Reverend Bishop Hooker said this: the lack of united voice between members of the different ethnic and religious groups, perhaps in Plateau, in Nigeria, anywhere, means that both groups have lost the moral authority to address, for example, the issues of ethno-linguistic upheaval in the body politic, abuse of power, moral decadence, and the like. What I think he's trying to say, if you try to interpret and translate a national issue in your own worldview only, the danger is we shall be interpreting, no, why are you touching my friend, my brother, my ethnic group? Whereas injustice is injustice. Unfortunately, I used to hear the word, we must tolerate one another. We must tolerate one another. We must tolerate one another. I think This is the danger now using a second language. We must love one another, not to tolerate. Tolerance simply means there is a day when you will say, well, look, I'm fed up with this person. So here, we should learn to use the right language. Love covers negativity. Love covers anything bad. But tolerance, there is going to be a day when we burst out, then the fire will be in the place. So those of us who speak publicly, I will crave our intelligence to think carefully. Let's use mukaunechi juna. Mukaunechi juna ba when we haƙuri da juna ba. I hope you get it. Haƙuri a aure idan pastor ya bari kawai ku yi haƙuri ba ƙauna a cikin aure akwai matsala. Don ran da mai gidan ya gaji ko uwar gidan ta gaji za ta dace ce pastor ga abinka. Amma if there is love and ƙauna until death do part us. Next. For anyone to think more highly of his ethnic group to be more original than others, then consider what Sheikh Mahmoud Lemu said. Mahmoud Lemu is a very good friend. He's the son of late Sheikh Lemu. I was a delegate at the national conference of 2014. And I was fortunate to be part of every stage of the conference. And this is what he said when he was given a chance to speak. He said, God is not a religious bigot. He is not a male chauvinist. He is not an ethnic, ethnocentric tribalist. That is, God is not an oppressor of anyone. God is with those who care, those who want for others those things they want for themselves. And what does that mean? I was in a committee, one of the most difficult committee, but we had one of the most wonderful relationships with the members of the committee up to today, because I represented the Christian Association of Nigeria. I'm not a reverend. I wonder how I appeared there to be just a lecturer, a village boy, to be at that conference and to handle those issues. But to the grace of God, we did the best we could, and the rest is left for us Nigerians to decide what we want to do with it. My dear brothers and sisters, for us to make any meaningful progress in the 21st century, we must rise up against the manipulation of linguistic or ethnic differences in our society. Certainly, there is a curious conspiracy of factors leading to this situation. We must fight against stereotyping, stigmatization, and dehumanizing of each other. We must fight against the use of linguistic differences as a political distraction and lawlessness which hinders state and national integration and development in our society. Next. One way to do this is to have dialogue like we are having today. The organizers, I remain ever grateful to you for allowing me to come and express my frustration, perhaps. Dialogue drives distrust and narrow-mindedness, and so open the way for cooperation and respect. But unfortunately, many of us are afraid of having dialogue. You see, we fear. Why? The reason being that many of us think that we have the wrong understanding. We see dialogue as a trick to seduce one into accepting the position of the dialogue partner. So they held the word dialogue with suspicion. But to me, as a student of languages, dialogue simply means you talk, I listen. While I talk, you also listen. And this is what we are doing here today. Next. Now, the classification. Let me just simply run this because I will run through it with the speed. The maps I'm going to show you will give you a picture how people migrated through human mobility, how they move from one location to the next. Unfortunately, many of our societies have oral history not yet written. But we as linguists, we combine history, linguistics, and what have you to be able to drive the relationship between members of one ethnic group. Next, you see the dark color in the center, the bold line. That was the border where the Lake Chad had its influence. You can see in several countries. Next, the Lake Chad basin was as far back up to Algeria, Libya, Sudan, Chad, Niger, Nigeria, Central African Republic, and Northern Cameroon. Next. And today, see where the water is. I will give some reasons later on. Next. Tributaries sending water into the Lake Chad. Next. Now I give you the bold map. That's how it was the basin. Now, what am I trying to say? At Algeria, the ethnic groups around the Lake Chad Basin, who are they? Are Arabs. The same thing when you go to Libya, they are Arabs. You come into Chad, Sudan, Egypt, Central African Republic, Nigeria. So some hundreds of years ago, there was no connection between those people who are grazing their animals by the Lake Chad in Libya or Algeria with the one in Nigeria. Am I making sense? Good. This has influence on language. Next. Now, back, please. Yes. Now, 1973, you can see how the water works. Now it dried up, 75, 86, 2001, 13, and 17. So you can perhaps understand some of the crises sometimes we face as a result of looking for a space. If there were 20 million people around that basin in all those countries, today the water has shrunk to this small and the population has increased. What do you expect? Nigeria was 60 million in 1960 at independence. The size of Nigeria has not increased, but the population has shot up to almost 200 million. Am I right? So you see it in the literature. So what do you expect as a consequence of this multiplication of numbers? Next, it has implication for us as linguists. Now I have just described, see the water 63, 73, next, 87, 97, next, and 2001. And the current data will even be less. That's why the states of the Lake Chad are now trying to recharge the basin. If the water fills up, it means people will again move out and will have space. If it dries up, the little space will have to accommodate more people. Next. Well, the effect of desertification. You see now, next. That's the effect. Something which you don't see before now will come right at your doorstep. Next. Plateau state, zone of ethnic convergence. Now with this beauty of the weather, the food, everything, it became an industry of many of these languages. Next. Now, the yellow, the blue, the dark blue in the map is, we call it languages spoken in Africa and in Asia. The yellow, we call them Nilo-Saharan languages along the Nile Valley. And then the dark brown and the light brown, we call them Kwa languages. This is now where Berom falls into. Benue Congo or Niger Congo. We'll come to that next. Now, I have just explained that. You can see how these language groups are. Now, how does it affect us? Next. You see how people move from Algeria, Libya, Sudan, Ethiopia, moving, following the water, no boundary, and how the various linguistic groups have come into the borders where these languages were not in existence before. Next. Now, this is the language map of Nigeria. Now, look at the yellow. The yellow tells you languages which belong to the same father. They have the same ancestral father. And the other colors. So if you look at the blue, which Berom falls into, and you look at the yellow, and you know that there was a kind of a push factor that moved people from their original place. You can look at the green up there in the Lake Chad. Also, another body moved in to create space for itself. And as a result of this, there is a rippling effect. So if you look at Ngas, Hausa, Kulere, Ron, Gumai, Kare Kare, Tangale, they all came from the same root. If an Angas man there takes a stone and throw at a Hausa man, he's attacking his cousin brother. If a Hausa man takes a stone and throws at an Angas man or Gumai man, he is attacking his own brother. Because they came from the same ancestral father. But linguistically, if you check what brings people more closer, language. These are languages in the Lake Chad Basin. And as a result of this push, you see, they have come now to occupy this land. Am I making sense? I want us to understand what has happened in history, which we may not have immediate data in our hands, and then we go about beating about the bush. Because language is identity, and everybody cares about identity. Now, in short, it's just to give you this kind of idea. We'll talk about it as we move next. You see, now today, the movement is coming in this way. No more through wars, but coming in this way. Next. The movement coming, you will just be sitting here, and the following day you see a whole community around you at Domot, as they will say. Am I right? It affects the social and the linguistic situation of the environment. Next. Now, I have only said this. Now, with this expansion of kingdoms, what happens? Those who don't feel comfortable to be assimilated, they run away. And that's how some of these languages of the Lake Chad Basin, the Gumai, the Ron, the Kulere, left the Lake Chad Basin to come and hide in the hills, so that they will be beyond the reach of whoever wants to assimilate them. And now, if they see the same tendency is coming, you are not fighting something. It's like two sons of a chief. The one felt injustice and he left. And now you are coming, the one whom you pampered, now is coming to him. You know, that old history will come back. I respect royalty because by the grace of God, as it was listed, I have 7 traditional titles. I'm the Minister of Education of the Borno Emirate Council, the Emir of Tikau in Yobe. Kegama, the title of Kegama is the Chief Security Officer. Now, I'm the Chief Security Officer of Wase, of Akko, the Lamid of Akko in Gombe State. I do climb my horse. I do wear my turban. And at Salah celebration like this, I receive the normal traditional greetings. What am I trying to say here? One has to be able to navigate, because I understood plurality and the essence of being in a pluralistic society. Some will say, but you are a Christian. That has nothing to do. Nobody has ever, as a matter of fact, these emirs will say, any day you are coming here, come with your pastor and let us all pray. Expansion. Next. Although this cultural linguistic assimilation did not kill all the people are still there, but the language has been lost. Now, there are many of us who are ethnically Berom, perhaps particularly the Berom children who are in Abuja or in Lagos or in London, who are ethnically Berom, but they don't speak a single word of Berom. Their language is either English or Hausa, or any of the major language of the community. Am I right? So now what do? Now when politics come, people start telling, where do you come from? You see, identity is not a question of taking a piece of cloth hanging around your neck and say, I am so, so, and so. One of the things is speak the language. If you don't want the Berom language to die, with due respect, His Royal Majesty, they must speak the language. Full stop. That's the only thing. I, as a linguist, I can write the language for you. I can do what I can do, but I can't keep the language. It will just be a piece of item in the museum if you don't speak it. Next. How linguistically is Nigeria? Summary, there are about 7,000 living languages today. 2,000 of these languages are found in Africa. 500 of these languages are found in Nigeria. Nigeria, which means is the third, has 1/3 of all the languages in Africa. You can understand what we are talking about. Now, out of this, several languages are dying. I gave a lecture to the Anaguta group. I told them on the 1st of February of this year, the last surviving speaker of one of the ethnic groups I was working on, she died at the age of almost 90. From that day, on the 1st of February, that language has ceased to exist on the surface of the earth. It has gone forever. And if you think Berom is far away from that, look at what is happening around. Next. Next. I have already talked about that. Next. Plateau, how linguistically is Plateau? Some fact and figures. There are about 50 languages in the state. So Berom is one of them. Mupun is one of them. Ngas is one of them. And one of these groups may be the most populous. It may be the most dominant. It doesn't matter. What matters is all of them as linguists, they are all the same. And they can play their role without exploiting the ethics of language. You remember I said it's not language that divides us, but the sentiments and the symbolism we attach to language. Next. As a matter of fact, when I came to Plateau State, Jos, I modified what I read from Achibe. He said, nothing describes what most discussions in Plateau State than this. Nothing in Plateau State's political history capture her problem of state or national integration more graphically than the checkered fortune of the word tribe in her vocabulary. The tribe has been accepted at one time as a friend, rejected as an enemy at another, and finally smuggled in through the back door as an accomplice. Next. Because of this, one is tempted to say, whenever you meet two people from Plateau State, the first thing that you hear in their conversation, it will reduce to the litany of the deficiency of one ethnic against the other. Now, for somebody who is like me, I can't afford to belong to any group. I have to belong to all. And to make sure they all work together. Next. It may sound damning, but there are many countries, many states with several languages, but that has not caused the kind of carnage we see in our society. This lecture, you can give it in any community. In any community. I tried to make it to look national, international, and also localize it here. For anyone to think more highly of his ethnic group, to be more original than others, then consider again what my friend Sheikh Lemu said. Every ethnic group is an oppressed minority somewhere. Every group is a religious and ethnic minority somewhere. Every majority is a settler, or a settler is an indigent somewhere. In any way, we are all settlers. Perhaps we just don't remember where we came from and why we came. Now, if you look at that map, you can now see the reason why, but it doesn't matter. We all belong to something. Those who read the Bible, you say the Tower of Babel. Okay? If you ask me which language would you speak in heaven, I will say Berom language, because that's my language. I don't have to be ashamed of it. Mupun will say the same thing. Hausangas, whatever will say the same thing. But this God is a God of plurality, and he created all these languages. Next. If my time is shutting out, you tell me. The nature of linguistic prejudice. Now, let me give you some of the roots of problems in a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multilinguistic state like ours. And it permeates across the nation. So across any country if you go. But the secret of managing that diversity is the art and the skillful nature or attitude of the leaders to be able to manage the situation. Unfortunately, linguistic prejudice against outsiders or strangers within an ethnic group is an attitude you find anywhere. I want to caution you here that there is not going to be any modern state that can accommodate prejudice against one another, because it will undermine its own development and progress. Language differences along ethnic lines can be source of threat to state building. And this is now where I want us to look at. Next. Language as a social tool. We socialize our children. I will tell you what. You see, a child learns a language from his mother, and he learns certain vocabularies, and without knowing it, until when he grows up, he finds that it is something negative in the language. So through speech, people are able to negotiate the social world in which they live in. This happens not just through the way the people talk or what they say, but fundamentally how the people say it. Through speech, people are able to quickly determine who is like them, who is not one of them. Next. In other words, language shapes what people believe and their expectation in their subconscious state of mind. This sometimes leads to ethnocentrism, which is the tendency to project one's own ethnic group as the center of the universe or everything desirable. Often this leads to deep-rooted prejudice, where one speaks despairingly about the group he or she dislikes. It is to this now we turn around. Now, let's see, all of us are culprits. Next. How one internalizes language, how effectively he uses it, depends on who the person is and the social environment and the location they inhabit. A people's identity is inseparable tied to one, the way relationships are established and how they endure. The kind of language one speaks shapes and influences how the person perceives the world. We are socialized through our experiences into certain habitual behaviors and habitual associations that the language encourages, or explicitly or implicitly. In doing this, language shapes our perspective of the social world we live in. Next. I give an example. Here are some derogatory terms by various ethnic groups. Here in Plateau, we have Tarok. I don't read, I have not marked the tone, but Tarok, look at the Yoruba man, the translation, there's Mamun Kipang. Who speaks Tarok here? Tell us, but the explanation there is, this is how they call Yoruba. If you are a Yoruba professor and a Tarok man calls you with that name in the University of Jos, would there be peace? Good. But this is the way it is. Tarok, still, they call Igbo Rimang, people who eat gari, is very soft. But here, Bong Kung Fu, stingy people, that's how they describe Ngas. You are the speakers of the language. Now, if a Ngas man is to be the governor of the state, and this is the way this man describes him, he has reduced him to nothing. Can you see what language can do? Now, look at it. You call, Nyamri in Hausa, it comes from the word Nyamri, give me water to drink in Igbo. So an Igbo man is an Igbo man. Why do you see him and call him just give me water to drink? When you see him, you call him give me water to drink. So if somebody wants to destroy, especially those in politics, I'm not against it, but I'm speaking to you from the linguistic point of view. If you want to downgrade this individual in your rural village, you can see the danger. Next. Ngas people look at Tarok, see what they call it. People who are raw. Gang. Is it gang or gang? You know the language better than I do. They look at Miyango, they say people who speak like birds. They look at Igbo, the same thing. They look at Yoruba, the same thing. Next. Now Igala, they look at how, so they call them what? Violent people in the language. They look at Nupe, see how they call them. They look at Basa, they say people ill luck. They look at Berom, see what they call Berom. People who wrap leaves with themselves with leaves. Now from that ethnic group. So what we are doing here, if they are watching us in Kogi State, they say, don't mind those people who wear leaves. Can you see what language can do? Next. Thief. They call Idoma sluggish. I'm not from Benue. Now, if you look into the politics, perhaps it may create a problem. They look at Igbo, they look at what they call them. Look at what they call Yoruba. Next, we run through. Some Hausa terms, Igbo, Nyamri, Kilinjabe, Thief, they call it Munchi, Igala, Gara, Kanuri, they call it Bari Bari, and then over here in Kaduna State, they call them Shinkafa, the Wake is a mixture of everything. Now, apart from that, Bura and Babur, one who marginalizes, now go to Michika, they look at the next ethnic group, they call them foolish people. Look at all the terms. Now you come to Rigwe, Plateau State, they see Tarok man, they call him snake eater. They see Thief, he ate all. They see Bagi, people with the hunchback. They see Fulani, they call them bush people. They see guys, they say Kuli Kuli, whatever. Now, go through, you can go through this. Mogul, whether they said they look at Berom, they call them back care. Is it whatever? So you see, these things are in our language, go right across the country. I'm giving examples. It is left for you to figure it out. Now, move on. Next, we close this one, and you go around. Now, the critical point I am making, the reference to the tribe already points to the kind of the woman or man he or she is certain to be. His or her secret thoughts are reasonably suspected on the understanding that members of the same ethnic group think alike. It's too dangerous. Linguistic prejudice. Next. Gender inequality. In inequality, Hausa, when you marry the woman and you divorce, they call her bazaura, and translated like second hand or leftover. But then in the language, there is no word bazauri for the man, even if he has married severally. So injustice there. Next. Igbo culture, a woman will give birth to a child and teach him the Igbo language, but they say kola nut understands only Igbo. But then the woman cannot break the kola nut, only a man does. Can you see, again, inequality language? Some people with different, they call themselves differently. They may even fight one another. We have a case of Babur and Bura in Borno, Mupun and Mogavul, Tangale West and Tangale East. Next. Stunted growth. This is what now I call, if you turn the world to be the center of the universe. There is no culture that does not have some prejudice and social injustice built in it. So if there is something dangerous in the worldview, mind or thinking of a person thinking about a particular language, the critical scholar should go deeper beyond the appearance and look at the substance. The issue is whether we as a people have the courage and commitment to dig into our culture and remove those terms. There was a time in America you call somebody a nigger. Today, if you do it, you go to jail. Am I right? So we also have to get the courage to look into our languages and find those terms that destroys the personality of other people. Next. I want to warn that we have to be careful of how we use our language. Next. We cannot afford to be separate. And now I adopted the song of Abubakar Ladan Hadakamu Musojuna because we are celebrating Berom Day. We must see ourselves as passengers in the same boat. For this reason, one must appreciate and eulogize the good and the great people of Beromland and support His Royal Majesty, the Gbangban Jos, the Dr. Jacob Gambuba, CON, OFR, the Berom elders and the government of Plateau State and the people of the state. In an adopted song, I put this for the Berom. Hakakai, you know, in the Wakar Africa is Hadakamu Musojuna now. Hadakamu Berom Musojuna. Hadakai Akasar Berom, ba wai hadak baki bane ba. A yi zambo ko a yi cuta ba, da wulakantar da mutane ba, ko zalunci da fashin kai ba. Jama'ar Berom ba ta yarda da wannan ba. Next. Jama'ar Berom ba jama'ar son kai bane ba. Kasar Berom kuma ba wurin mika kafa a ci daɗi ba. Ba wurin alƙawarorin ƙarya ba, inda masu son irin wannan a gaba, to ashe haɗin kanmu bai tsinana mana komai ba. Ba shakka idan ba mu son juna, haɗa kai da wuya mu ga ya zauna. Kullum sai a ga sabon fitina, jayayya ko neman magana, sai an so juna an daina kafin haɗa kai ya kau da fitina. Next, jama'ar Berom, jama'a ce ingantacciya, hamshakiya kuma ingantacciya. Mai ƙarfi ga ta amintacciya, da basira da ilimi tacacciya, da anaguta da mafun dangas da magwagwun haɗaɗɗiya, da babba da yaro kuma karɓaɓɓiya. Next. Now, this is talking about language, and it runs through when the colonial the colonial government tried to put up this. I don't want to bore you with this. I will go through some maps which will explain this. Next, historical perspective. I told you how the British government now had to manage Hausa as against the English language, which now they want to pass in. There was a lot of challenges. Next. So to avoid pushing English directly, in the far northern Emirates, where the final conqueror came in 1903. What did they? The British did something they call indirect rule. I will just give some key information of indirect rule. Indirect rule means cautious policy adopted by the British to avoid direct confrontation with themselves and the traditional rulers. Under indirect rule, language of education was pro-vernacular, which is in essence, Hausa language had prominence. The linguistic implication in government offices, Hausa was being used. Colonial officers receive financial benefits and reward when they learn and speak Hausa. Next. And such a policy was defended in the British House of Commons. Next. Now, look at the Northern Protectorate and look at the Southern. This is the Nigeria we need to believe in. So this was how the country was before in 1914 it was brought together. It has implication on language. Next, I don't need to repeat that. Now, when all these languages and cultures were brought under one rule, perhaps the British government did not think so seriously of the implication. Next. English slowly replaced Portuguese and later on even the indigenous languages. Next. No, come down, back one slide. The language of commerce at that time was English. Next. This is Northern region, Western region, Eastern region. This is the Nigeria, and today divided into 19 states. Next, 36 states. The policy was to encourage indigenous languages, and schools who teach English, they receive some award. Next, grant, At that time, the schools in the Middle Belt were only run by missionaries. And far up, we had 1921, I think, a college in Katsina, and 1909, I think, in Kano. And Hausa was being used. And those who go and receive teaching, training in Teachers College, they were expected to come to the Middle Belt, which is the middle part of the country. But you see, there is no zone created. Next. Now, that created a problem because of the linguistics acculturation, which it was being seen from the far north. What is it? It created a feeling. Many northern Christians, they see Arabic as synonymous to Islam. So also, many northern Muslims, they see English as synonymous to Christianity. So if you go along this line, so Europeans were Christians. Europeans spoke English. Therefore, Christians spoke English. Now, Arabs were Muslims. Muslims spoke Arabic. Therefore, Muslims spoke Arabic. And when I came here in the university, I do hear some students saying, instead of Salamu Alaikum, but they don't have outside, they start to say Shalom. You see, Shalom is the same root, Salam. I, as a linguist. But now, you see, now language is being used to show social demarcation. And for us as linguists, we try to say, you can use any language to serve God and to do whatever. But be careful if it is to create division between people. So some of the opposition, you see, I quote, I'm not speaking my mind, I'm quoting, the quote back, please. Some of the opposition to Western style learning, pejoratively style Boko, may well be traceable to the fear that it was designed again to replace the knowledge of the Arabic language. And there was a poem, we learned it in school. Yan makarantan bokoko ga karatu ba sallah sai yawan zagin malam. How many of you heard this song? Good. And now, a lot. When I came here, I thought I was so fortunate, this Yushan board, to study in Europe and also to teach there. Now, when I came, I sometimes don't understand whether people know what Christianity is all about and what the culture of the European is all about. Some can't make the difference. It's something beyond the scope of this training. So next. Now, Lugard had to say, if the future native rulers of Nigeria should acquire knowledge of English, the Fulani would, with their natural ability and capacity for rule, become invaluable co-opters with the British administration. But later, Lugard had to admit the northern province does not, as at that time, supply a single clerk or artisan for the government to serve in the, out of its own intelligent population. Next. So the lack of knowledge of English in northern part of Nigeria was denying many northerners from taking government positions. Next. Now the linguistic, we are now coming closer, and I will soon round up. This one I'll just run through. Next. Multilingual nation. People make us to believe multiplicity of languages will not make us develop. I, as a linguist, I refuse to accept that. They say African languages cannot be modernized, and it is not good for development. No, Berom is good for development. Mukun is good for development. Next. The view expressed for us is not right, because even students or pupils who are taught, I learned that there's a Berom school somewhere. These kids, if you tell them, teach them anything in Berom, and then ask them to learn English as a language, they will come better, because we as linguists have carried out this research. Those who are multilingual in nature and they start from the language of the community, they are better in terms of receiving education. Now, African languages, because we have denied our languages to participate in our own development, because of that, we have high rate of poverty, inequality in the distribution of wealth, and the like. It brings us down, and because of that, the gap is too wide. To put it differently, the failure of us, African leaders, to use our indigenous languages has created and compounded a lot of the social, economic, political issues that we want the ordinary person to understand, and we're pushing it to him in another language rather than in his or her mother tongue. And because of that, I have to read this, unfortunately for you. African languages previously had a role and vitality prior to the colonial experience. Today, the situation has changed. Important European languages now serve in administration. Therefore, it is not unusual for African children to be raised speaking English or French, even at home. And many African adults are not speaking their own mother tongue. Not many Africans, we must realize, not many of our children go beyond primary school. And because of that, English cannot solve the problem. Next. So they need to know the local language of the community. Administration. Next, I have talked about this. Move on. I have already talked. Now, why Berom is relevant now? How the linguistic situation gradually moved into why we need to celebrate our language. In 1967, in 1976, we had 19 states, 87, 21, 91, 30, 96, 30 states. Now, the restructuring of the country laid the foundation of a new political thinking in terms of linguistics, especially with respect to the various ethnic groups. For minority ethnic groups, the concept of statism provided a basis for the emergence of new identities and cleavages or loyalties over the limiting regional loyalty. Now, some of us who float around, there was a place I put in to apply for a vice chancellorship, and my only offense is I'm not the state indigene. And I wonder, nobody said this to me when I was lecturing in Austria. Nobody accused me of that when I was lecturing in Germany. Now I came home deliberately to teach at home. And now just I apply to be a VC. My only crime is I'm not an indigene of the state. So I had to tell my children, now where do we go? And there's no university in my village to go back to. So why should I teach you a child? You have no problem. Only when I have to be the head of administration, you raise an eyebrow. So that is why we say we have to be careful on making our village to be the center of the universe. I will soon talk to conclude by telling us the need of multiplicity. Next. So that's how states were created and languages kept increasing. There was a time Berom was under Benue Plateau. Now when it became Plateau, you see, maybe it's the biggest language in the state now. In Benue, maybe Tiv became the biggest. Now, you see, you go to Bauchi, you go to Para, now under the regional level, some of these groups are minority and they cry against the dominance of another language. Now, perhaps when they come to a new state and a state is created, the same if not, which they received under the so-called bigger group before, now they made it over. How do we develop with that kind of mentality? We cannot. Next. Now, politics of minority came in, and next. Carry on, next. Next, move on. Now, the Second Republic government saw the need to create the national policy of education, on education, which simply means the child must be taught his community language and later on English at a higher level. So which means to teach a Berom child in the Berom secondary school here is not against the government policy. It is stated there. So the government policy with regard to language is multi-dimensional. Next, language policy, I have already summarized it. Move on. You see here at the junior level, you can, it has not been specified, but the language of the community has been specified. Next, only at the higher level, they need to, for the purposes of unity, they need to learn one of the major languages of the country. Now, interaction between language and economic development. What is the economic value of language? Talking on economic value of language, both as the tool of communication. When the chairperson was speaking, honestly, I was so relaxed because she has already hinted most of the things that I will say here. So, Ma, I'm most sincerely grateful for that. So I will just go fast. But the question is, it is generally believed that the value, prestige, and importance attached to a language are proportional to its perceived usefulness in various areas of life. You cannot force a language into the throat of people at a certain level. So the community language is important at the community level. At perhaps the state level, you have to find a language which its market value is relevant at the national level, at the international level. Therefore, nothing contradictory, but to deny yourself access to other languages just to believe in your own. This is where we say, as linguists, we differ a little bit. Next. A modern economy requires high-level manpower and technology for its proper functioning. And because of that, you see the power of English. That's why every person sends his child to English school quickly from nursery. They should learn even in the language of their community in nursery school and in primary school. But today, as early as 2.5 years, you are sending children to, and they are writing exams. Because of what? We perceive English as the language of prosperity and as the golden ladder to upward mobility, international jobs, and economic opportunities. Hence, it is preferred over indigenous languages, which is seen as the one having limited. An indication of the perception where power lies is located in the language. This is what this song is saying. Next. Now, for a state like this, why you need all these languages to be active in the economy? Because of what? Tourism. This is a state of tourism. I don't need to paraphrase this. I will just go through pam, pam, pam. Language is central to training. If you have a big factory, and then large number of your laborers cannot read the safety instructions in the local language, they will just switch it on, and the factory can just be on fire. So you need to utilize the local language, and that is why Berom, one of the major languages, is important. It's important. Buying and selling in this global world, you can't afford to be isolated. Language has a market value. I have given that of English. Next. Flexibility and creativity. I am not quite sure whether some of you celebrated me when I was citing that poem in Hausa. Huh? So because I learned it. And sometimes there's a flavor. You can send a message more clearly in the local language. Provides additional income in language-based economic activities such as language teaching, translation, interpreting, advertising, publishing, and printing. Look, if NASCO is here and you want to sell product, you can translate it in Berom and it will be bought right at the rural areas because they know the content of what they are eating. They know the content of what is produced, and you create jobs for the local community as translators and also interpreters. So it improves social capital. You will enjoy other cultures. If you think your own culture is only the one that nothing else, what do you do when you cross the next border? It's a problem. So you can retain your language, keep it, but Also learn another one, it increased social, it developed capacity, improved executive function. Now, some of us, you see, when I was in Yobe as a vice chancellor, I had to ask, people give all sorts of reasons. You. I said, look, my friend, I can't be at that level and come down to local. And at the end of the day, despite all what people say, today I finished in Yobe. I went to Yobe without a single title. I was coming out of Yobe with 7. Not from my ethnic groups. None of this is from my ethnic group. Majority, not even my religious group. But why? Why? I said, knowing languages improves executive function. I could be able to see certain things which if I were just monolingual, ethnocentral, perhaps I may not see it. So justice and fairness must be part of it. That's why chief executive needs to know this. It distinguishes you apart. You know what I mean? Next. And then for those who go into dementia, delays cognitive damage. It boosts your memory because you are always learning something new. It makes you multilingual or multitask. Employees, you need them. It helps you to take a rational decision. You don't see somebody speaking a different language as your enemy. No. See what is there in his head and what he can provide. You become competitive. It builds love towards one another. It builds respect. It builds compassion, innovation. It fosters peace and understanding. Then economic benefits of multilingualism increases productivity, create new opportunities. It also brings problem solving. It fosters peace and understanding. It empowers. We celebrate differences. Also, managing and valuing diversity is a key factor to effective managing of people. Now, so what are the examples of cultural diversity? Now, a state like Plateau, where Berom is the major ethnic groups, I believe. Now, with other ethnic groups around, how do we manage this diversity and still remain Berom? A diverse workforce is a reflection of the changing world and marketplace. The world is increasingly becoming globalized, so it requires interaction among people of diverse cultures, beliefs, and religion. Learning becomes, Now in school setting, having students from all over the world. Now our university is one of the multicultural. I was trying to take the linguistic situation in the University of Jos to be able to help me manage, if by chance I could become a VC. But then I'm not, and I will not be, because it's finished. Okay? Access to quality education, it also supports deep learning. Next, learning becomes more interesting and dynamic. It also builds character and confidence and pride and growth for the future. If a child knows this, then I gave a lecture at the Arewa Consultative Forum in Kaduna when I had just come back from Germany. I said, one of the frightening things I faced when I came in was the fact that communities are now divided. A child grows up only within one particular community and he goes upway. Primary school in the same place, secondary school, perhaps university, first degree, second degree, third degree, and at the end of the day, anybody he sees from outside, he says, this is not your place. This is my place. Because he is not exposed. So we need to understand why diversity is important. How to support cultural diversity, interact with people outside your culture, be open-minded to listen and to let go of judgment. If you see anyone who is being culturally insensitive, speak out against it. Accept the differences that are beneficial and not harmful. Don't force your beliefs on people with other opposing views. Advocate hiring of people working so that they could work with you. One interesting thing, I don't want to sound very proud. Just 2 weeks ago, a young man from here, from this thing, I wrote a reference. I said, apply to this university in the UK. They need people to come from international environment, and you are likely going to get some scholarship. Lord and behold, I wrote the reference, I put the argument, they gave him to PhD, 3.5 years, full sponsorship, school fees, accommodation, transport, himself and his family. The only reason they want to have people from other cultures coming to their university. That's the only reason. And we put up an argument. Whilst perhaps sometimes in our country, in our own states, even in the academia, we tend to push people out. We have to be very careful. Sometimes some of us professors, when we speak, you don't make a difference between us and the man in the village. How to manage cultural diversity? Now, I have mentioned at the beginning, countries with the success stories lie with the ability of their leaders for having a political art of handling the diverse units. Next, we are about to round up. What Nigerians must know, what you and I must know. The serious challenge Nigeria faces, or our community, is such that successful development strategy is based on complementarity of factors. Nigerians must need to figure out whether they want to transform their country for better or for not. Whether they want to be part of the modern world and the important players in it. If they choose to, then they must ask, what are the minimum requirements for them to succeed in such a system? What do they need to do to create these conditions? I want to say the truth of the matter is no nation in history, in human history, that has developed by rallying on miracles. 60 years ago, there were few churches and mosques. Today, every corner there is. Has that changed our own moral upbringing, morality? So I want to sound that scientifically, but here is the African worldview. Our mystical worldview. Next, back. Compare the African worldview with the disparity of the Western worldview. J.S. Mbiti, a theologian from Kenya, said, where the African is, there is his religion. He carries it to the fields where he is sowing seeds or harvesting or a new crop. He takes it with him to the beer party or to attend a funeral ceremony. And if he is educated, he takes religion with him to the examination room or school or even the university. If he is a politician, he takes it to the House of Parliament. Next, but see the contrast. In Britain, in 1979, there was a severe storm of snow. A minister of snow was appointed to handle the situation. But in the same year, there was drought in Kenya. Here what an African leader did. The Kenyan president simply called for a day of national prayer. And as his practices, went to church to pray to counter the drought. I mean, you get what I'm trying to say. I taught linguistics. It's so dry if you are to teach anybody the African way of thinking in Europe. But you must be able to navigate your way scientifically. Throw yourself out of it. Teach as a scientist, not emotionally involved in what you teach, because you have to teach science. There is no linguistics which is just specifically for African, or chemistry, or whatever, to just man and one for Chinese. Now, I also recently read in the paper, there was some drought somewhere, and another one, somebody sent me a photograph, 2 houses on fire. In Europe, they sent drones to quench the fire. And in Nigeria, in the African setup, people gather around the building and they were praising and speaking in tongues for the fire to die. The theology wholesomely shows some aspect from the African worldview in many ways. The cosmology is still tied to their own forefathers and are still traditional methods. Now, why did I bring this? If we have to write our languages and use it for scientific way, there are certain terminologies in our language which will weigh us down, but we need to filter them out and know how we can move forward. Now, to conclude very soon, the role of Nigerian languages in achieving sustainable economic development. As a linguist, this paper will not be complete without informing you why we need Nigerian languages. Now, language is an area which is often neglected by development workers and government. Nelson Mandela said, if you talk to a man in a language, he understands. That goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. If you translate any religious book in Berom, and when the owner of the foreign language go, they don't go away with the religion. If he believes totally because he knows what is in it. If you do it in a foreign language, when the owner of the language go, he goes with then the man goes back. And that's why indigenous knowledge in the Berom language is very, very critical for the upbringing. The philosophy behind sustainable development, what we are saying here, it is well established that individuals in the nation can develop educationally, socially, politically, economically, and culturally through interaction with government agencies that disseminate policy through their various indigenous language. That is why development indices such as internal cohesion, integration, unity, economic well-being, and citizens' participation in governance are promoted through indigenous languages. The more you should encourage Berom language into all the sectors of the economy. The use of Nigerian languages, especially minority ones, as media of communication will significantly enhance the achievement of sustainable development in many ways, such as the eradication of hunger and poverty. Poverty goes beyond just lack of income or resources, but includes lack of basic services such as education or denial to partake in decision making. If a grown man or woman or child cannot understand government policies in his or her own language, then you see he has been cut out. And not everyone goes to university. I mentioned it at the beginning. Next, solution to global issues, if they are brought into our language, we get it clear. The key to national development in Beromland is therefore tied to how much we can harness our language as tools for engaging the community, both national and global. Next. I want to counsel here for those who have organized this conference. You must first of all understand that the issues of development, and for a significant number of the populace, this will be better achieved by transmitting all issues to them in their indigenous languages. Once they have understood the concerns of the government, the local communities will be in good position to promote practices and behaviors that will be conducive to the achievement of the development, of the developmental issues. Next. What was said does not imply abolishing international languages. What I'm saying, each language must be put in its own place to play its own role. Excuse me. Okay. The future challenges to manage our diversity well in Plateau State. To manage our diversity well in Plateau State, I would like to counsel that one, real development can only take place in an environment of peace and justice for all. Hence, the importance of continuously seeking a better way of thinking. And this seminar is very, very important. It's a world standard way of dialoguing. The seminar today is the move in the right direction. If we cannot end our differences, at least we can help to make Plateau State or the world a better place, modified by the author. To wrap up, there is a story, His Royal Majesty. This story is about a man, a young child, asked his dad, why is it that always a fight between the lion and the hunter always wins? After all, the lion is the most ferocious animal in the forest. And here the response. The father answered, son, those stories will always end like that until the lion learns how to write. Now, if you don't write your history as people, as Berom people, as the owners of the language, so the story will be written to you or for you by people like myself, and you may not perhaps say this is not what you want. That's what I'm trying to say. So encourage the Berom language for education. Dear friends, languages are good for us. Our forefathers may not have had our privilege, but now we have the privilege and the warning is there. Next. In all, whether we realize our dream for the study of development of Berom language depends entirely on our determination and commitment or lack of it. What we do or fail as individuals, as a people, the future of the Berom language is owned by the Berom people themselves. That's what I'm trying to say. Because you own the language, you have the sentiments about the language, and you are the only people who can make it survive. By what? Speak it. Ways and means towards Berom language revitalization, preservation, and promotion. Raise the prestige of the language. 2, increase its prosperity and wealth creation. 3, increase the legitimate power within the dominant community. Next, maintain a strong presence in the educational system through strong engagement in literacy. Train speakers. Speakers of the language are to be given appropriate training for teaching the language. Patronize the ethnic language. How many of us parents send our children to learn the Berom language? Especially those of us in Abuja and the like. I show somewhere, I hope I will go back to Abuja. My good friend Minty will not kick me out as a neighbor. I hope I saw him somewhere. Thank you. When I make reference to Abuja, don't feel I'm thank you. How many of us take our children to the villages to learn the Berom language? How many parents can actually converse conveniently in their mother tongue? Why is our school curriculum not emphasizing our languages? Next. Of course, I do not have answers. The answers are many, but to my mind, there are only two ways. We can either sit back and do nothing and let the sleeping dog lie. In this case, we may find ourselves singing the obituary song of the Berom language, or we have to wake up and make it survive. Next. But I caution, I said it at the beginning, those of us who go about giving lectures are encouraging people to work on their own languages. Some people, for political reasons, they will look at us and say, these are troubleshooters. That's not our intention. Even also, government could not have set up the Department of Linguistics and Languages in all universities. But scholars must be warned that while in languages, studying endangered language or such may seem very nice and interesting, they will be faced with so many social-political issues. The languages most in need of archiving are probably the ones that the political situation is not so right. Next. Conclusion. His Royal Majesty, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is your language that enables you to identify who you are and what ethnic and linguistic entity you belong. Your people are referred by the language they speak and not because of anything else. One can change his face, his name, his profession, and even his address. But worse change is denying your people their language. One may speak a foreign language, but that should not make him or her not to belong to his people. It is not too late for him to retrace his steps and learn his language. Whatever choice is made regarding group membership, language is key factor, an identification badge for both self and outside perception. And this has significant implications for education, economy, and governance. You are truly identified by your language, not by other aspects of your culture, because ethnic groups share this with many others. No ethnic group in the world speaks your language. Conclude, the obvious, there's a story, the final story, of 4 Berom people. You must have seen it somewhere. I adopted it. This story is about 4 Berom people. One called Mr. Everybody, the other somebody, the other anybody, and the last one nobody. There was an important task to be done, that is to develop, to revitalize Berom language. And everybody was sure that somebody will do it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry because it was everybody's job, but everybody thought that anybody can do it. Nobody realized that everybody would do it, and it ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. The moral of this story is that revitalizing Berom language and culture is everybody's job. It is the task of any Berom person. Every Berom son and daughter should do his or her own conscientiously. Next. His Royal Majesty, no tribute can adequately show our gratitude to His Royal Majesty than for all of us to rally behind this visionary ruler and give the Berom language and the Berom culture the honor it deserves by making it survive. I hope I'm able to leave you to go with the feeling that we can't be Berom without speaking Berom language. But we must also develop our language to live amongst other languages to build bridges. Thank you very much for listening, and God bless you. Thank you. Before I conclude, I should have, I have very powerful gurus behind, Mr. Usa Ignatius and Mrs. Vera Anna, who have been helping me, and they helped me a lot to develop this paper. Thank you. I thank you very much. Please, another round of applause for our guest lecturer. I am sure as he was speaking that he placed a mirror, or each one of us placed a mirror before ourselves to see how guilty we are, or how close to the real thing we are. What we have done to promote Berom language, or what we have done to reduce it to a nobody's responsibility. I pray that we'll all repent. I didn't hear an amen. Okay. Our time is fast spent. We have discussants. We're supposed to read their citation, but we don't have the time. So I'm sorry, our discussants. We'll just call you up, and you may wish to tell us one or two things about yourselves instead of us reading a full citation. You're supposed to be up here because these seats are not for decoration. Chairman, Central Planning Committee, you've refused to take your seat. And also Chairman, Symposium Committee, you're supposed to come and support our discussants. I would excuse my brother. He would make his presentation from where he's seated. That's Dr. Sam Godongs. But I want to invite Mr. Austin Daliop and Dr. Mrs. Kacholom-Best to come up here.
All right,
okay, Dr. Sam, you want to come up? All right.
Okay, just a minute, ma'am. It was actually segmented. We have Dr. Kacholom-Best will discuss on language, and Austin Daliop will discuss on the economy, and Sam Godongs will discuss on politics. And each has 10 minutes.
No, we're giving them 5 minutes.
Okay, worry. 5 minutes.
Yeah,
okay.
5 minutes because we still have other contributors. Thank you very much.
Very much, Madam Chairperson. Before they come up, would like to recognize the following individuals. Dara Toma Minty is the Chairman Security. A round of applause for him, please. Mrs. Abigail is the Builder President. That Reverend Davo is the Prayer Chairman. Dagyang Dudu is our BECO President. And Dafwong Vos is the Vice President of BECO. Let's put our hands together for these dignitaries. Your Majesty, I would like to introduce this particular individual very specially because he's my boss, and he's the Chairman, Media and Publicity Committee, and also the Director of News and Current Affairs, Plateau Radio Television Corporation, Daya Kubutadi. A round of applause for him, please. Okay, I think what I'll do is, you already have the microphone, so the ball is in your court. Whatever makes you comfortable. If you want to sit down there, if you're comfortable, it's okay.
I bring greetings to our father, His Royal Majesty, the Gom Jones, and his traditional council, to the organizers of the program, to those that have been invited from other places, acknowledging particularly my big sister and auntie, Honorable Ochepe, who is ably chairing this, and our co-discussants and the organizers. It's a privilege to be here, and I'm sorry I was slightly late. I have been on transit since morning, and I had to break the transit to come here. And I've begged of the people that I've got something to do, And when I speak, I may take my leave, not because this is not important, because the commitments clashed at the last minute. Our senior colleague in the university for doing such a great job. I teach regional ethnography on sub-Saharan Africa, and I can assure you, sir, that I've gotten a lot to include in my lecture notes about our region. And we could see from his presentation the diversities that we had as nation states that were further affected by the historical accident or intentionality of colonialism, which brought us together, and how struggling through it to manage the diversities of a country that he ranked as third in the languages in the world was a bit more difficult. And then coming to our own Plateau State, we have a fairly good share of ethnic diversities. And he has looked at how this can actually be a negative force in bringing about disunity. But thank God he also told us how we can use that positively. Now, I have been asked to look at the title of the role of language in the present and the future of the Berom. As he's amply said, language is a people's identity. In sociology, we refer to it as the non-material culture. We have material and material culture. The non-material culture is that aspect of the culture that includes our language, our beliefs, our norms and values. And the beliefs, norms, and values are transmitted through language. And in addition to that, we differ from other animals because the human species, we have the capacity to learn language and to transmit it. But for animals, even though they have their sounds, I do not think that the different species of animal transmit it to others. So language is critical. It is a critical force in passing on the culture. I keep remembering a story my mom told me, which I teach my students about. Language, the meaning may convey a deeper sense of what people feel. She told me that in the Berom language, you would not tell somebody, your neighbor that has come begging, that let me go and fetch. That it was seen as a statement of pride. So you say, let me just go and scrape what is left. So a woman came to beg the condiments, the local condiments, Zos. And the mother told her daughter, and she saw that the girl was in the room for a very long time. And she thought, oh, this foolish girl. And indeed, when she went, the girl was filling all the bowls she could get with the Zos because they told her to pack. Not understanding that for the Berom man, it is pride to say you have so much you are going to fetch out of it. So language is a critical way of culture and people's belief systems that you get. Now, as we said, many things have happened to language. And for us, the Berom, urbanization, globalization have all affected with migration into urban areas and the breakdown of family structures where these languages are transmitted have changed. And because of those changes, the language, as our guest speaker has said, has also affected our capacity to transmit it. But much more importantly, and I am also, I don't know whether a victim or a culprit, with migration and urbanization, you also have intercultural marriages. And with intercultural marriages, it is more difficult to navigate this aspect of maintaining the culture, using it to develop it and to transmit it. So because of that, we find out that with colonialism that had come, some of the things that we had as a language were enhanced when the Berom language was codified. So with the Christian religion, we saw that the language was put down to writing and people learned to write. I remember some of those little charts. I call them primers we used to learn. And I remember, of course, that there were storybooks. I remember that of Dapamza, Berom. I came across that, I think, in my primary 4 or 5. And I remember trying to read it. And when I said, hey, 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 my sister-in-law laughed and said, hey, hey. And I learned more to read out of those. Now, these were the things that people used. The Berom language was turned into parts of the Bible, the hymns, and then later on, and now we successfully have the whole Bible and other things. And we see that attempts by governments who have concentrated on the major languages, at least in the local spheres. For instance, I know that the news is read in the different language or some of the major languages in Plateau State. But as you said, that is not sufficient to be able to do that. Because with the things that have happened with intermarriages, urbanization, and our belief that English language is the way to go, we have mostly abandoned the language. And one of the things that I try to do is that when I meet a Berom person, I like to speak in Berom. But I can assure you that there are some of us that would really, really prefer to speak in Hausa or in English. And we find even in houses where Berom parents raise children, the children can't speak the language. He was right in saying that. Now, with these issues, that means it is difficult to transmit the culture. Sometimes, even when we transmit the culture through the making of food, there are ideas behind it. Even when we go to farm, there are ways, there are things that we did as a people to show our belief system in that way, and how, of course, language. I've read a lot of C.C. Jacobs because I teach that. I see even the traditions and the belief system and harmonious coexistence, which influenced some of the rituals that we did during the planting season. And we see that now we have moved that into praying in churches. But ultimately, because it's diverse society, we do those in the English or Hausa language, but hardly in our own languages. Now with this, the present situation where there is a lot that needs to be corrected, what then do we do? And I think that we can leverage on modernity to enhance that. The fact that electronic media is very much used, social media is very much used, means that we can use modern ways that we can engage young people in a manner that they are happy to be engaged, and they will still learn the Berom language. Disney has made a lot of money with the Disney World with cartoons. We can translate some of these, our Berom, into cartoons that are spoken, and thank God that there are subtitles. These are things that can actually get children to be interested, and they watch those. And we've brought them into very little, even the little iPads and things that we have. It doesn't have to be that it is a TV program, but within our homes, we can have times dedicated to watching. Let's watch animation, animated stories about the Berom culture. I believe those kind of things can enhance the language. Now, it is said about children that they have capacity to learn second languages, which develops up to the age of 8. What does that mean? It means that children can learn many languages, and the Berom child will not be disadvantaged. Not be disadvantaged in the sense that they can learn Berom, they can learn any other language that come across. You find children that live in compounds with people who can speak other languages. And that gives some of us hope, but that also challenges us in intercultural marriages, which means that therefore, if we are determined as people in Plateau State, as the speaker has said, you can be a majority somewhere, but in another place you are a minority. So in Plateau State, we are basically all minorities. So if I'm married to a Plateau State man, or even somebody from somewhere else, we speak our languages, the children have capacity to learn 5 or more languages fluently. And in that way, we'll not lose culture. In that way, we're able to teach them some of those values that are passed. Because the major aspect of culture is that it is passed from generation to generation. When we seize the capacity to do that, we'll not develop. But if we leverage on technology, we're able to do that. And you see, the secondary schools come maybe to learn the major languages, but from the primary school and from childhood, as I said, those can be ways in which we speak it. Our mothers, we normally are the ones who speak the language. And for us, they used to have tabak. We'll go, before we go to secondary school, they'll tabak and they'll tabak in Berom. Therefore, if we have those opportunities to engage, or even have, as he said, retired civil servants, not maybe a school, but having people in communities where, like, orally, folklore was passed on, that you have those people that will engage them. Something like Tales by Moonlight, but in smaller communities where children can learn these things. And we see that schools now are enhancing cultures by having children dress. Other than dressing, I think that if children learn to sing and have poems in their languages and are able to recite them, that will do. So the Berom have potentials of actually redirecting our steps into having this language. And there are many entrepreneurs producing things. I'm proud to say one of those entrepreneurs is my cousin. So you see, Pierre Chun Acha Fonio and Yop and Yunana Palm Talk have that. So and this product I know, and even through me, has gone abroad. Somebody will ask, what is Chun? And they say, oh, that is Fonio in Berom language. Through our products and services as people, and we have many young entrepreneurs, we can take it over. We see 5 Loaves and many of our artists singing. We see, why can't we even have drama groups again that will produce drama in Berom language, like you find in Yoruba, you find in Hausa, and have them in Nollywood or whatever wood we have, where language can be enhanced and bring about development, but also raise the economy. I know I've passed my time and my auntie is gracious to me. I'm very grateful to that, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much. We'll listen to
His Majesty, Dagbongom, Jos, members of the Joint Traditional Council of Jos, Joint Traditional Council, Chairman of the Planning Committee of Nzem 2022, other distinguished personalities that are here present, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the press. I would like to start by saying congratulations to the professor who have given us a lot of insight about languages, the advantage of language and how we can use language. And I've been trying to see how I can use the language to tie into economy, which I'm supposed to talk about. Because you can't just be talking language, your stomach needs something. One of the reasons why we're having some of these challenges is because the people are losing confidence. The people are losing hope. And how do you, as a people, for instance, the Berom man, how do we gain confidence in our language? How do we gain confidence in society without offending our neighbors or other tribes? We need to look deep into our activities in terms of our economy. For instance, if you ask a question today, where does the strength of a Berom man lies in terms of economic development? We used to hear people say the Berom man is good in anything, artisan, engineering, anything that has details, mathematics. But I don't know whether we can still say that today, because gradually we're losing. And what is the reason? Maybe because we have not been focused as a people. or we just take things for granted. But I think today is another opportunity for us to re-examine ourselves and look at where God has kept us. If you saw, those of us who saw the map that he was showing from the Lake Chad Basin, it has been shrinking. Today, it's just a small river. It used to house more than 5 to 10 million people doing all kinds of economic activity, but it's has shrunk. We, the Berom, we have to rethink, looking at our position on the plateau. Don't forget, we are the gateway to the northeast of Nigeria. In the 70s, in the 80s, the man from Borno, from Yola, from Taraba, Bauchi, Gombe, they come to their market in Jos. Do they come today again? Because there was breakdown of law. There was no peace, insecurity. How do we bring back security into our state? How do we bring back peace? The Beromland's role in bringing peace on the plateau. Because where there is crisis, there can never be economic activities. So I want us to go back and look at, yes, we have a role to play. We must make sure we don't use our language. I'll just give some example. When he hears that Kenjal, I'm sure some of them are not happy. There are certain words that come from our mouth about our neighbors, our friends, that they don't like it. But we keep calling it, whether it is joke or it is real. We need to call people right, using the right language, using the right communication. Let me go back to the economy. The Berom is one of the most luckiest man in the north central of Nigeria, because we're sleeping, we live and sleep on wells unknown to us. I will give some few examples. I was home recently and I went to a particular community within the Beromland. And a family, they had a well that is a source of their water. And I think a bucket fell into the well between the month of, I think, March or April. At that point, usually the water table level is usually low. So a young man jumped into the well to remove those buckets that fell into the well. As he was coming out, he fetched the sand inside the well. He discovers there was tin inside. And what did he do? He invited his friends. He called his family members that there's money here. And we have been living in poverty. Within 1 week, that well was mined. They got over 22 million naira. And I'm telling you that all over Plateau, especially within the Beromland, our people are sleeping with poverty, sleeping on wealth. Let's look at agriculture, for instance. If you know the agricultural potential of the Plateau, the Jos Division or the Beromland is one of the highest, it has one of the highest potential. There is nothing that does not grow in our land. No crop, whether tropical or name it, every crop you put on our land, it will grow. But the unfortunate thing is that we're busy selling the land. Land is capital. If you're to appraise the wealth of nation, it starts with your land. People, yes, but land is also very critical. We have land that can grow anything, but we're not utilizing it. If you see people on the farm, mostly 70% will be women. Where are the men? We don't go. I was coming this morning from Abuja this morning and around Horse, and I was so impressed. There were a lot on both sides. I think there were more than, let me just guess, let's say up to 100 people from both sides. They came together, they were just farming for themselves. And that's how it's supposed to be. We must till the land. Today, The money is in agriculture. Money is on the ground. Whatever you do, money is on the ground. The resources that this nation prides itself with, apart from the human resources, is on the ground. Nobody take petrol from up. It's on the ground. The tin is on the ground. You do agriculture, it's on the ground. So how have we utilized our own ground to empower ourselves so that confidently we can speak this Berom language in our homes, in our schools, in anywhere we find ourselves? And another thing we need to do as a people, we must also move out. Like the prof mentioned, you went to primary school in Jos, you did university in Jos, you went for NYC in Abuja, you ran back to Jos, you started your master's in Jos, you did your PhD in Uni Jos. You have not moved. You will still think like us in the village. But look at the person who have moved around this country or around the globe, going from places to places. His thinking, his orientation will be different from ours. When he wants to articulate issues, you will see him talking as somebody who understands the world because he has lived with other cultures, he knows other cultures, he knows how people behave in other places. But when you localize ourselves, just local champion. No, I'm sorry to use that word. We have problems. We'll just become building problem for ourselves. It's not possible that all of us must leave, but at least particularly the young ones. And I'm happy that we have students here in our mix from our comprehensive school in Crete. That they listen to the prof. You must strive to do well so that tomorrow you'll be the leaders of the land. So I just want to re-emphasize the need for us to begin to form cooperatives in our various communities to help our people. We must have markets. Each district must have a district market. You can't farm and take the goods to another community. Certainly within your community, empower yourselves. I'm sure if you look at the entire Berom district, the markets we have, they are just very few. Maybe one horse and where. Yes, the building material market is there in Jos South, but we want each district to have its own market. Whatever you farm, you empower yourself with it. We must have cooperatives where women can take small loan from their little contributions. And those of us in the society that God has blessed, support those communities, women groups that have cooperative society so that they'll be able to empower themselves. We should also make sure that there is no home in our community. We must either we're doing animal husbandry or keeping some birds. Even if it is just 2 goats, 3 goats that can multiply. But you go to homes, not even a dog, they don't even have. How do you empower yourself? We must have something that will keep to help our economy. So on this note, I want to appeal to all of us that please, in our little ways, we must make sure that we're part of the economy of Plateau. We're part of the economy of this state. We're part of the economy that will help our families. Let's not think that today a civil servant that receives 100,000 in a month and you have just 3 kids in school, I can assure you, you'll be struggling. We must do something. Don't live on one stream of income. We must find alternative streams of income to keep us so that our language can continue to strive. Thank you.
That was Galadiman Jos. We'll listen to Dr. Sam Godons. Please keep to your time. I know you know me, right? Yes. Thank you very much. Masibeni Yishu, Mahayang Dara Bongon Jos. David Guam, the Vesino Mumwa, David Mad the Bayong, Salhemo, Dagwe Tain and Rat. David Mad the Bavay, the Sin Law set up. Would think Yaga in a hissimo the name of Julica. It did Peter Vasilla. The chair, our guest lecturer, permit me to just lean on the established protocol. You see, I nearly changed my mind. I regretted why I read political science, just listening to the professor of linguistics. The passion, the knowledge, the scope, everything is there. Now, unfortunately, politics is in there. Even in language, there is power relations in what is called language. There's power relations. The language of the colonizer cannot have the same pride or place with the language of the dominated. You see, the pluralism, one thing I'm taking away from his lecture is that we need to be open at one stage and you need to be closed at another stage, open and closed. Pluralism opens you up, and then your patriotism and nationalism closes you. You need a balance. You need a balance to be productive. You need a balance to be beneficial to yourself and to your community. Again, this language thing, language, expresses identity. That's the highest form. And you can see that in our context, they are hunting us. We are not fighting the Magavul, we are not fighting the Angas, we are not fighting the Gomai. There is an aggressor, there is a terrorist that is hunting for lives in Plateau. Irrespective of your ethnicity, irrespective of your language, they will slaughter you. Power. It's power. So, sir, we subscribe to the logic, we subscribe to the depth of this language argument. But there is a political aspect and perspective to this. I have just organized my contribution in 4 different segments. 1, this politics, we must know what politics is not as a way of delineating what politics is. Politics is not a game of chance. It's not like Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. It is not subject to the invisible hand, the forces of demand and supply that you... Look, politics is not even an issue of being fair all the time. Politics is in vogue now. Yes, sorry, before I fall off the precipice. Don't worry, you'll see, politics is not equal to faith. Politics is not always. Then what is it that we need to get right? Politics is that process that you acquire power to authoritatively allocate resources. Both concrete, material, symbolic, you need power. Politics is the process of policy making and implementation. Politics, they say, is war without bloodshed. Politics tells you what you get, where and when. These are things. Politics, to me, is the struggle to capture power and the effective use of that power. 2 elements: capture it and then effectively use it. We have deficits in our land. Political office holders have not understood this dynamic. We need to struggle, yes, to organize and capture power, but most importantly, we require the effective use of that power. Number 2, what is the present state of political affairs in our land? With our language, the commonality we share in language, what is it that is at display currently? Has politics delivered on basic needs? Has it delivered on our security? Has politics delivered, on those ideals that we set for ourselves? No. So it means for us to activate politics that will be useful and beneficial for us, there are things we need to do. There are things we need to do. As of today, we are not playing our politics according to a philosophical basis. There is no ideological basis for what is going on. If you don't have a plan, people say you have planned to fail. Our land cannot continue like this. We need a basis. We can use two approaches to develop what our political plan is. Our experiences. Do we need to continue losing lives? Do we need to continue losing land? Do we need to continue unemployment? We can use our dissatisfaction to become our plan. That is one. Number two, we need, in a normative sense, we can develop ideals. This is the picture we want this land to be. We want unity. We want infrastructure. We want education. That can be the ingredients that we use to develop a plan. So that when you acquire power, we gauge you, we measure you by what you have done in these areas. Simple. We cannot continue without a plan. We cannot continue. When you ask an average Berom man, say, why ye? What be married? What be married? Baba, 100. We need to grow beyond personality. We need to go institutional. We need to go popular. We need, by my suggestion, we need more community-based organizations. We need to multiply them everywhere. We need doctors, we need lawyers, we need engineers, we need technicians, we need farmers, we need teachers to be solidly organized. We need that. If we organize, then the duty will be centrally coordinate them, so that once the EXCOs have a coalition and there are meetings and there are decisions taken, the whole nation has spoken. You see, presently we need to redesign this land. Politically, people strategize. You know what, man? Don't stay here where the time and chance will happen to them all. You will be at the back. People are strategizing 50 years, 100 years from today, when they would have all gone. They want certain political power relations to be sustained. You know, some notice in the summer. Yeah, I said about would be a landlord who would have hit the hero to Gulato. Yeah, I said, yeah, about whatever plan, yeah, about what organizing the tomorrow. So, suggestion home, we must be reoriented, reorganized, and remobilized. Yeah, I said the words and don't please. Even how work picture a symposium, you know what? We have deficits, we have needs. We must outgrow, but what I say, Emirate system. We are Republicans by nature. You know, we multiply in the associations. They will to over highlighted will. Yet, if the missioner ha, you say, Madam Jack taking suggestions from Choji, no Bimaku, they will know chair. Thank you very much for coming, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. Well, this is just a tip of the iceberg. And I believe with the permission of His Majesty, the theme for the 2022 Nzem Berom would be discussed further. I want to promise that on the program G Lobby Room, most of these suggestions that have been given would be deepened. Is Silas around? Silas Dung?
I hope you've taken note. This must be expanded. Actually, my desire for this symposium was that we would have beamed it live and it will be translated because there are too few of us in this hall and this message needs to be publicized right to the grassroots. Our time is fast spent. We would like to, well, let me thank the discussants for all that you've said. They are well noted. I'm sure the symposium committee has a team of rapporteurs and they're going to collate all that you've said so that the discussions will be deepened. I would like to invite the representative of PDAN for a goodwill message. Is there anybody from PDAN, the Plateau Indigenous Development Association? Thank you, ma'am. Oh, please.
Permit me to put my eyes. Otherwise, I cannot see. Yes, sir. How are you? His Majesty the Bongom Jos and the other members of his traditional council. I stand on all existing protocol, but permit me to thank His Royal Majesty for one singular humanitarian work he did to our family. My late elder brother, Gidauna, was his classmate in Kuru. And when he died a few years back, His Majesty was in the family home and he did what was expected. So, sir, let me thank you sincerely for this. There are many of you here whom I would have loved to acknowledge for the good that you have done to us, but you may have forgotten, especially Ma. You remember Wengas Development Association. We have been to your house several times and you have helped us. Professor Andrew, you have been a colleague. I've listened to you on so many occasions in this paper. And so many of you, let me not forget my senior brother in Gosa, Jambol. Please, you remember what you did to us when we were in secondary school. I will never forget. And our former Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor Nelson Ochapi. Yes, and others, please let me just stand on existing protocol. My name is Professor Zakaria Damina-Goshit. I'm of the Department of History. I'm representing Professor Aboy Madaki, who is the president of PDAN. I don't know why he decided to ask me to come, but let me tell you all that you have done today. We in PDAN, we are very excited and we thank you and wish you the best. I think he pushed me here because I'm the chairman of the Plateau Indigenous Language Council. And Professor Andrew Haruna has made our work very easy because we have been looking for an opportunity like this to pass the message round with regard to the national policy on languages. What we have been doing for the past 3 years is that based on that policy, we have selected 2 languages in the north, 2 in the central, 2 in the south to be taught in primary school. So in the north, naturally you have Berom and Afizere. In the central, we have Ngas and the Mwavul. In the south, we have Tarok and Gamay. That doesn't stop other ethnic groups going ahead, but we want to experiment. I'm not a linguist, I'm a professor of history. But because of interest, I've seen the Ngas language dying, just like you are also crying a bit about Berom. But sir, since we started, we have been finding it so difficult because we discovered that to translate the curriculum in primary school from English to our various languages. In fact, I'm of Ngas. Honestly, for the past 1 year, we have not been able to do it. We are still working. And for you, the Berom, we have been having series of meetings with your colleagues. Madam Hanatu Damton is one of them. We have people like Dara Musa Botfang, Dara Jack Shalom. I don't know if any of them are here. We meet almost every month to discuss this issue of language. And the people who are teaching us connect that in connection with the SIL, the white men are the one teaching us our languages. So, sir, your lecture today has further supported what we in PDAN stand for, to promote and preserve our languages. So, we have tried several times, maybe we have not followed the right format, to be able to go to the Bongomjo's office and to intimidate him and other traditional rulers, because the bill for this work, honestly, is so high. And it is only through you, sir, that you can help us to talk to your sons and daughters who are in high position to support the various. We have what we call Institute of Languages, the Ngas Institute of Language, the Berom Institute of Language, the Marvel Institute of Language, all these things just to work to try to translate our languages to, from English to our various languages to be able to teach our children. You have all spoken very beautifully, but it has to be done scientifically. We have to organize it just like we all learn English from primary school, secondary school, and so on. And this is where we are. We need the teachers. Each time, some of these, you are people like Dara Musa Botfang come, Dara Jack Cholom come to the meeting. I just look at them. They are just retired civil servants. And you can see how they are struggling. So today, sir, this lecture has helped us a lot. I wish I have prepared a lecture, but we will find time again, maybe to be able to speak to you. Something is being done, but we need the support of all of you. Thank you for giving us this privilege, and sorry for taking your time.
Thank you very much, PDAN. We promised question and answers, but our time is fast spent. We can only take one question, 1 minute from a man, one question, 1 minute from a woman. If you want to speak, put up your hand, and then the professor would reply briefly. Then we'll listen to our royal father, and we close shop. No questions? Okay. Let me come forward quickly. One man, one woman. No long talk. No lecture.
I observe the already established protocol. It's just a plea, since I'm not allowed to talk much. It's a suggestion that, like the prof ended up, instead of us leaving this hall thinking this person will do the work or that person will do the work, I want to call on our leaders to please take responsibility and see how some of these things can be made practical. Like the last speaker said, let's go scientific. By the time as a people, we have a team that can do a SWOT analysis of the Berom at this age. And we can project 5 years plan, 25 years plan, or 50 years plan, and then begin to follow these channels and see how these things can be practicalized. I think that is more something that is more practical that give us results. But if we continue to talk,
1 minute is
we may
gone.
not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any lady?
Thank
No
you.
lady will give an opportunity to those in diaspora. If you want to speak, you have to walk forward. But if you are right at the back, we can't wait for you. It will take another minute for you to come to the front. Anybody on Zoom who wants to ask a question or make a comment? There's no indication.
Okay. No one has indicated. Is there a hand? Okay.
Hello, good afternoon.
All right. Good afternoon.
Can I speak?
Yes, you can, please.
Okay, my name is Chumdauda from Lagos. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you can. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. What a job well done to the professor. I'm so happy to join the symposium this evening. He has spoken a lot. Parents may prefer the Masani Lemgasara. I appreciate the professor because I think it's not Berom alone. Like people here in Lagos, you hardly hear people speak the language, their tribal language. Whenever you encounter a person that speaks his own language, it's always very strange, and we always find it as a thing of joy to hear people speak their tribal language. And then the other thing is that especially the youth. But this is the exposure, I don't know. Things are happening outside here. What is in the Professor Iwe, primary school to secondary school, where you just in law. So much of care. Who's the exposure in Wahaba? Community, the young can tell us to your engine. Exposure ahead, chances, opportunities by here. What were I one? Getting me man, a matter of my Amadonia, Dagas enemy. What do you hear us lately? Committee and Darabongo show the demand of a young Manabongana. Like with Teodora and Berom Holtia, I think Yazahonga you in Chundoda in Lagos.
Stephen Young.
On our time. Go ahead, please.
All right, Stephen.
Unmute, please.
Unmute yourself, Stephen.
Okay. Masitam Berom show didn't jam 3 yo. Amaboka have shot back. In fact, Kirimis me higher. Yedora walk this symposium for more. That way, Teorama for could be second then what targets the hot. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Stephen, and everyone who hooked in via Zoom to watch this program. We really do appreciate your contributions. Okay, can the DJ give us some music before we make the stage very clear for our father? Thank you, DJ. Thank you very much.
Please, we'll now compose ourselves to listen to our Father, His Majesty, the Bongom Jos, as he addresses us. Your Majesty, sir.
I guess they didn't want me to see the empty seats back there. That's why they brought the podium low. Let me say good evening to you all, particularly to our professor who has spoken very passionately about the challenges that we are facing to do with our languages and making them a tool for the needed development that we crave for. Let me say, when I was growing up, I started my elementary school in Kabum. And then when we moved to Laranto, I was taken to SUM Primary School, Chonyap, where the teaching was in Berom language and the Berom version of Hausa. I hope you all understand what I mean by the Berom version of Hausa, because they were not very good in Hausa themselves. And then from there, my father didn't want me to go to Forum, the senior primary school. So 3 of us from Laranto went to St. Luke's Primary School because they were doing transfer examinations. And each father took his son on a bicycle. Beautiful ride to St. Luke's in Central Jos, not far from St. Teresa's. They waited for us to sit for the exam. We sat for the exam. We finished. We were told the date to come to check for the results. And that day, another beautiful ride on bicycles. We got to St. Luke's. The results were pasted on the wall. And we started following list by list, checking for our names. The fathers were behind the scene. And eventually, I saw my name. But in a very, very tragic situation. I was the first among failures. And then my other colleagues, their names were after mine. And then, of course, with our long faces, we went back to our fathers. And from St. Luke's Primary School there to Laranto was the longest bicycle ride I've ever had. When they hit a small bump, and of course the roads were not that, you get a big knock. Prof, you have some Berom there. I hope they're translating for you. It took so long to get home. We did not even think, neither did our fathers think of the fact that in Cholnyap it was Berom and Hausa, the Berom version. In St. Luke's it was English. And for God's sake, how did you expect us to pass that exam? In English. And so we sat at home for some time until an uncle of mine who was a messenger in a labor office realized that his labor boss had a wife who was teaching in Baptist primary school. And so he approached his boss. And then eventually I was invited for another exam, of course in English.
And it was when I really grew up that I understood why, instead of sending me to class 4, after writing the exam, they brought me to class 3. I had to repeat again. It shows that I didn't perform well, and I guess they just pitied my uncle. And instead of telling me to go away, they just dropped me another year back and so on. And I was now forced to learn English because 98% of the students were Yorubas. So I had no one to speak Hausa to, no one to speak Berom to. And so I was forced to learn English. I won't tell you the progress that I made because... And just when I started Baptist Primary School, a late uncle of mine, my father's younger brother, the last of them, was learning carpentry in town, Dodo Street, close to the mosque there, Central Mosque. And he needed company, he was a bachelor. So he took me to stay with him. Big compound, all Igbo. And then within a little time, I started speaking Igbo. It got to a stage between my uncle and myself, we discussed in Igbo language. In school, I learned Yoruba. And I am saying this because I want to appreciate one of the comments that the professor made. When you learn different languages, your horizon is very bright. And so by the time I finished primary school, I could speak Yoruba language fairly well. I could speak Igbo. In fact, my father got so frightened about the rate of Igbo I was speaking, he came and took me back home. And that is why I can speak Berom today. When I was transferred from Sokoto to International Airport, Lagos, that is when I used my Igbo and Yoruba languages to advantage of my work, because nobody knew I spoke any of those languages, and I never told anybody. And so when the Yorubas are conniving about something, I just take notes. And by the time I intervene, they are surprised. We didn't bring this guy for here this time. The same with the Igbos. So there is a lot of advantage in languages. And if you grew up with my father believed in government like anything. And he will keep telling you, you know how to you know how to Ramakaranta, Beberal who say you got it, Master Urum, you know Bebel Lazara never Rahochen Berum, Unko Bahak, Bahakama Hanad with Bebobio Wasera Berin. In the form Babe Juru, and the Makaranta Babe to be Juru, Babes and the Jurus Marberim. That was his logic. He never went to school anyway. Now, we've had the importance of languages. But let me be sincere to say with the Berom people, we are losing our language because of inferiority complex. If you think about it, you know, everybody wants to speak Hausa so that the Hausa man will appreciate that I can speak Hausa. I want to speak English so that others know that I'm educated. Sometimes when a friend wants to speak Berom, you begin to push him aside. It is inferiority complex that has costed us our language. I have a number of Tarok friends who are married to non-Tarok women, but their children speak Tarok. That is one tribe that we need to copy also. Their children will speak Tarok. How are they able to do it? In fact, I understood when Mrs. Best said mothers are teachers of the young children. That is very true. It's very factual. But when the Tarok father will bend backwards to make sure that his child speaks Tarok, for that, you have to give them credit. And so we must deliberately learn our language, and like he said, learn other languages. Anyway, for the audience here, I think it's too late. I can't imagine Bomfan here going to learn any other language. But we must ensure that our children get to know the language, get to know other languages, because it opens up their horizon. And by the grace of God, because I've had cause to walk out of Plateau State, it is very easy for me to understand an Igbo man, very easy for me to understand and appreciate a Yoruba person. And of course, I speak Hausa. And to understand the Hausa person. Back home, I speak Berom. And of course, I understand my brothers and sisters. So there is advantage in language. I want us to also keep in mind what the discussants have said. We need to leverage, we need to be deliberate in what we want to do. But Professor Sir, let me tell you confidently that the Berom Traditional Council has set up a team, and we are determined to build a Berom museum, sort of a Berom, what do they call it? Library and other things. We are calling it Berom, but our intention is to cover the whole of the Middle Belt. The team is already working, and they have shown me some computer systems that they packaged together. And years ago, we were able to get the entire works of Professor Jacob. We have them in the palace, and we've taken them, and they are going to scan them, and they are gathering material from the Jacob material to whatever they can get in Unijust up to Oxford University. And they made contact with some of these old white men who had spent time here. And some of them have documents, so they are pursuing that already. I got an update as to what they are doing about 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago when they came to. So what you are, we understand truly the content, your passion for indigenous languages. We are already doing this. But the fact that we've set up a committee, the fact that the Berom Traditional Council is handling this, that does not mean that we know it all. We want everybody to key into this project. Whatever document, whatever information, some people have written books. We have quite a number of them there in the palace. Some years ago, some people were saying St. Luca Gong. He just wakes up, dreams and writes. And I say, has he ever stopped you from writing? He is writing from his own perspective, from what he understands. And if you think he is not capturing the history well, go and write your own, instead of sitting back and criticizing some other people. In fact, the concept of writing books is to trigger reaction and encourage other people to write their own, what they understand. But we always will want to sit down criticizing, and I have gone through a number of the books that Lucas Nzem has written. There is valuable content in it, even if you don't agree with all that he's writing. But you will pick something historic. I had the opportunity to work in Sokoto. I had the opportunity to discuss with some of the traditional rulers. That is after I left and came and become a traditional ruler. There are different versions of our migration routes. And like the professor has said, when you talk about Ngas, Magavul, Mupun, up to the Beriberi of Lafia, they came from the same route. Kukawa, they came from the same route. And the Ngat have a very strong link with the Borno people of Northeast. I recall when Golongas died, about a month later, I was in a meeting in Kaduna when that meeting held on the day that the former governor of Kogi died. And so the announcement was being made at our meeting. And then Sultan remembered some other traditional rulers that passed, and he mentioned Golongas. The moment he mentioned Golongas, if you see the reaction of the Shehu of Borno, you will be surprised. The way he looked at me as if the Sultan said, I killed Golongas. And during tea break, he rushed to me, said, Bongom, why did you do this to me? Why? You know, he was so agitated. And it confirms to me that they are linked. The Beromland will have different versions. I have my own thinking too. I hope I will be opportune to put it in writing. And I'm not claiming that when I write something, everybody must buy it line, hook, and sinker. No. If you have some better information, come up with it. Writing is a challenge. And so we are already doing that. One other thing that will help those of us indigenous languages in a state like Plateau State is an act of government. Why everybody, the local government tier, that tier of government called local government. The purpose of local government is that level of government left for the indigenous people of that locality. In a lot of states in Nigeria, both north and south, you don't see every local government worker is from that local government. I don't know why it is in Plateau that you will take a Berom man and send him to Kwampan. You take a Kwampan man, you send him to Bassa. You take a Bassa person, you send him to Shandam, and all that, all under one contraption called, what is it name? Local Government Service Commission. It is this state that brought us together. If you send a state worker to any local government, that is okay. Let every native of the local government work in their local government. That will promote and easily capture the things that you are saying. There's always a cry that the local government, that tier of government is not developing. How can it develop? When the chairman only is from that local government, and whatever money he's able to make, he's running to just to come and buy a plot. And all the staff, you are sending, I mean, when people take responsibility for their local government, that is when their eyes will open to develop it or to destroy it. And they will have nobody to hold responsibility. So I'm appealing to our politicians to reconsider. You cannot take a Plateau State civil servant and post him to Bauchi or Kaduna or Kanu, because he doesn't belong. It's the same thing with local government. You can't send a Plateau civil servant to go and work at the federal level. Yes, we are all under the umbrella of Nigeria. And so recruitment at federal level should take cognizance of the federal character. to give everybody a sense of belonging. The recruitment at state level should take cognizance of state character from all the local government. And then the local government employment should take cognizance of districts up to village level. And then everybody will have a sense of belonging. If I can't come to Jos to work, at least I'm working in my local government. If I can't go to Abuja to work, at least I'm working in my state capital. And so on. I don't see anything wrong in it. And I don't see any benefit in the system we are running today. And when people are taking charge of their local government, even language will develop. In the days of NA, nobody who did not belong to, who was not a native of Jos NA, that worked in Jos NA. Punching NA, the same thing. So what did Nigeria crumble? And there was more development, coupled with the fact that the local governments were under the purview of the traditional rulers. We may not go all that way today, but we need to sit back and look at the old and bring the new and do a sort of realignment so that we can make progress accordingly. So when we talk about developing ourselves, there is the component of governance that needs to address these issues accordingly. Today, history is not even taught in schools. No history in primary school, no history in secondary school. I don't know what you people teach with your Department of History. Maybe you teach United Nations, NATO, and all those things. Those are not historical realities. The real history that we learned about some kingdoms and a lot of things. In fact, what is in the Bible today, we did a lot of those things in secondary school. We read that biblical history without knowing it had a spiritual component. Alexander the Great, did any of us ever link him with religion? But is Alexander the Great, his story is in the Bible. His story is definitely in the Bible. And so we still have a lot of realignment to make. Professor, let me confess to something. When the chairman of the organizing committee brought your name, I said, who is this again? They said he was this, that, this. I didn't just want to argue. I said, okay, if you say so. Professor Andrew Haruna, let me say I will deliberately invite you to the palace because we have some things to discuss. I'm highly impressed with your presentation and the manner of the presentation. You can write a fantastic paper, but the manner of presentation may rubbish it. But honestly, I'm highly impressed with what you do. And like I said, we have a lot more to take. So, Jambole Nagate, thank you for bringing this, Professor. You know, let us not just listen and go away. Let us take something out of this. Let's take something and let us work with others so that we can achieve the purpose for which this type of lectures are being organized. I want to thank you all, and I pray that we will meet tomorrow by the grace of God in the venue of the finals of Nzem Berom, and I want to say you are invited, and I will deliberately look out for you. Thank you, and God bless. I'm sorry, I'm in a hurry. I have an appointment with government, so I have to step out and go. And the appointment is for 6, and it's 6 already. So thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Dara. Thank you so much, Your Majesty, the Bongom Jos, Dr. Jacob Kyangbuba. We really appreciate you and the time you have spent with us here. As he's been escorted by the council, I think we may take our seats. We are gradually wrapping up. And yes, we'll take the vote of thanks. But before we take the vote of thanks, ma, you see, a lot of talk has, been made in this hall. But my takeaway are 3 from your paper, Prof. And then the first one is this: you manage your diversity, but maintain your identity. Language does not divide, but it is the attitude of those who speak the language that makes it to divide people. And then language has a market value where it can be used appropriately. Now, if we forget every other thing about language and what we have learned today or heard from the professor, let's not forget these 3. Now, we'll take the vote of thanks from Dr. Dauda Geman. A round of applause for him. As he comes to the podium, I've been made to understand that the Secretary, Jos North Local Government Council, Honorable Samuel Cholom, is with us here. Okay, you're giving us the vote of thanks. A round of applause for her, please.
All right, Shoimwa. My name is Shekina Pam. I'm taking the vote of thanks. On behalf of the 2022 Berom, Nzem Berom Symposium Committee, I would like to first of all extend my most sincere thanks to the Almighty God for making today's event a success. By His grace and mercy, He has seen us through the entire event. To the speaker, Professor Andrew Haruna, I would like to extend a hearty vote of thanks to you for sparing your time out of your busy schedule to grace the occasion and to share with us your expertise and professionalism, which you have wonderfully demonstrated. Today, we have the opportunity to hear your thoughts and also to pick your mind on so many things that you have shared with us today. Thank you, sir. My special thanks also goes to the wonderful discussants, namely Dr. Kachalom Best, Mr. Samuel Godons, Mr. Austin Pamdalio. Indeed, we are blessed to have you in the land and to have such caliber of resource personalities. My profound appreciation also goes to the Honorable Chairperson, Mrs. Honorable Sarah Ochepa, in company of our distinguished guest who has graced the auspicious occasion. Thank you very much, ma. And to our audience, both physically and via Zoom, who have helped to make this day special by gracing the occasion with your attendance and your attention. We love you, and in closing, it is my hope that the aim of this symposium has been achieved. And this lecture has brought to your light and this lecture has brought you enlightenment and empower you on how to aid the academic growth that you so enthusiastically pursue, to steer you into new conversations, information, and to aim forward with informed decisions, to make informed decisions. As we conclude, I would like to express our gratitude to the leadership of the Bongom Jos, that Jacob Gyangbuba, who is in company of the Bigombre. We thank you for your insight and inspiration that constantly strengthens the unity of our nation, the Berom nation. Our unity is absolute, our dedication is evident, our connection is profound, and that is how we should be, because we are in this together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. At this point, would like to invite the Reverend Devil. Is he here? The Reverend Devil, please do us the honors of giving us the closing prayer. After which we will all stand and take the national anthem. Our national anthem, the pupils or students who sang it in the Berom language have gone, so we will sing it in the English language, the national anthem, after the prayer by Reverend Devil. Thank you, sir.
Let us pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we bow down our heads before you this night. We thank you, Lord, for taking care of us. We thank you, Lord, for leading us. We thank you, Lord, because we have been challenged. We thank you, Lord, for all those who have been contributing in one way or the other. Thank you, Lord, for our Father, the Bongom Jos. Thank you, Lord, for every person here and for those who are hearing us outside Nigeria. Lord, we pray that your blessings will be upon us. We pray, Lord, for tomorrow's event. Lord, from the beginning to the end, may your name be glorified. As we disperse from this place, grant us safety, protection. Give us success in whatever, Lord, will do. Dismiss us, Lord, with your blessing. Shall
we stand for the national anthem?
That we are telling Iraq, and as we go home, that we are getting